Hello and welcome. You're watching the Policy Times Unleashing India Web Summit series. I am Akram, editor of the Policy Times, and with me is Dr. P. Shekhar, chairman, Global Smart City Panel, and author of around 80 books on different issues connected with national growth and development, and also an architect of the concept called secure governance. We will interact with two eminent experts from two different domains, one from academia and the other from diplomat background. And I think there cannot be a better topic to discuss on this, and it is actually one of my favorite topics. There are three things that is being used to measure the well-being of any nation or any society or any civilization. One is how economically well off a particular society or country is, how technologically advanced that country is, and how globally integrated the country is or society is. I think these are three common parameters which are benchmark for growth and prosperity and development. To discuss these issues, we have Professor R. Gopal, who is a global management and education guru with over 100 research publications and also a recipient of many prestigious awards. Currently, he is a director of the management department in the G.Y. Patel University, one of the best universities of the country, based in Mumbai. Also branches across India. We also have one of my very close and also an expert, Ambassador Anup K. Mudgal. He's a retired IFS officer and has served as ambassador to Mauritius, Indian ambassador to Mauritius, and also represented India in the diplomatic area in many countries of the world, and having in-depth understanding, knowledge, and strategic framework of economy, technology, and multilateralism across the world, and how last 2 to 3 decades these things have become the center stage of prosperity in the world. So we will discuss with them. Without taking any more time, I want to welcome and invite Dr. P. Shekhar, the chairman of the session, to kindly take over the session.
Thank you, Akram. Yeah, let me welcome our two experts, Anup Mudgal. He has been in various countries. He has represented India in very important forums. He's also on the advisory panel for very important things by Government of India, Prime Minister himself, and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And he has been also instrumental in blue economy, where he is considered as a global expert. We have worked together on that particular forum. In fact, I first met him in a forum where we addressed 11 heads of countries on blue economy. And I would request him to talk about himself first. I'll just run through a small presentation, but I will not go through each slide. This is to say the importance of the economy, technology, multilateralism. We are not a country of, a single republic. As we know, India, even by population, is more than 206 countries put together. Then we can understand why the word multilateralism is very important. And also, we have got land, water, and so on and so forth. I will not again go into the depth. Now, in terms of today's condition, we feel self-pitied that why did this happen? But we should know that it has happened in the past, and human beings have come out of it. It has happened many years back, and I'm counting for last 30, 40 years, right from 1975. Something like this has happened, and within the shortest possible time, human beings have been able to come and go above what they were left behind. But at the same time, we can't be philosophical. We should know that what is it that it has happened today. This COVID, coronavirus, whatever we may say, it has created a great disparity. It has created, because today media, today's expectations, today's advancement in technology, they have made so many things which are socio-economic and which are of great importance to everybody. So, right from the smallest student to the oldest person, things are somewhere affected, and some things are somewhere affected and reported instantaneously, which was not true till the last similar thing happened. So this is a snapshot of various sectors which are getting affected. And the decline has been quite bad, 20%. Many times it was, in terms of uh, monetary terms, it is in trillions of dollars globally. Now, I come from a system called secured governance, which has a typical solution to such things. That is where we are talking of self sustained economy. And that's what this does. And this has got a good solution for COVID also. Now, what is it we want? We want a sustained economy. We want no poverty. This is an idealistic situation. No poverty, zero hunger, good health, etc., 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 on the idealistic system. And how nearest to that we can go? Even at the most ideal situation, we may not go into the idealistic system. And from where we are starting? We are starting at a level where we are now thrown into a dumps, which also is next few slides. They are slightly, giving the bad picture of what is happening today. The change in various sectors in terms of global, in terms of India, in terms of its impact, right from tourism, hospitality, they are all today dead. Okay, and they all have to be revived back. At the same time, agriculture and healthcare, they are sort of bringing us to a good level. So in this, the challenges to the management are there. Our two experts will have very lot of things to tell, which is what is today talk on. Here, government has to play a very proactive role. Public has to play a proactive role. Every sector has to play a proactive role. So we have an academic person as well as a person from the foreign ministry, ex-foreign ministry, is what is there. And in all this, as we go up, I just put a small slide on wasteland because wasteland is going to play a huge role in India's future development because that is something which is totally neglected because that is a land which is available free, which is there everywhere, and which can be used and which can bring the value to whatever we are doing. Now, let me introduce the first guest, my friend Anup Mudgal. He has been a very big force in blue economy and in multilateralism. In fact, when we say multilateralism, I mean how we fare with respect to us, our growth with respect to other countries. Even when we say something like today China is not being asked for, people then we are fighting with Vietnam, we are fighting with Indonesia and all. No, we work along with them. Every country has to grow. Nobody can take my food from my plate. Same way, other countries also have to have the feeling. And today, those type of thing is what people like Anup has. He has got an excellent relationship with all the countries he has worked. He has worked throughout all the continents, if I'm not mistaken. Now, I would request him to first have a few 3-4 minutes on himself first, so that we know his journey to whatever he has achieved. I know that he has started off as a teacher, which our professor on the other side is there. So I would like him to start from what he started in teaching by just 3-4 minutes, and then on what is today, and then the global picture, how things will uh, grow, and what all we can look forward to. Anupji.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Shekhar. Thanks, my dear friend Akram, uh, Professor Gopal. I hope you're able to hear me, right?
Yes,
No
fully.
issue. Yes. Uh, you see, uh, the the agenda you have decided for today's meeting, in fact, is a very wide canvas. In fact, each item you have put there probably would require a separate conversation. So let me see. I will uh, use the storytelling mode for making things simpler, for explaining my view. In fact, I will not say that this is the only view or this should be the view of everyone. This will be my view based on the reading of the situation within the country and elsewhere in the region, globally, and also the pandemic which has struck us suddenly, totally unaware. Dr. Shekhar, as you rightly mentioned, In fact, I started first as a research scholar, then I was in kind of research related functions, jobs for a short while. Then I also did some work with Indian Forest Service, which brings me closer to my interest in sustainability. Then almost 32 years in diplomatic service. I spent almost, I would say, about 10, 11 years in Europe. I served in Belgium with the European Union or European Commission or dealing with them. I worked in Germany. I worked in Austria, including with the United Nations. Then I served in former Yugoslavia. And by the end of my term, it was no more there. I spent another 10 years in Americas, both North and South. Then in the Indian Ocean, I was High Commissioner in Mauritius. So that covers Western Africa and part of on the eastern side, Southeast Asia, and then Indo-Pacific, as we call it today. While I was in Delhi on different occasions, I dealt with, again, former Soviet Union and was there dealing with them till the time they completely vanished and became 15 different countries. I dealt with ASEAN, starting from right from Myanmar down to Indochina and further down. So those are the issues which, in fact, brought me very close to the different forces which have shaped the international relation in some manner or the other. For example, when you work in Europe, especially with European Union, and then later on with the UN system, and you personally witness collapse of former Yugoslavia there and the fall of Berlin Wall, it gives you an idea of the forces which brought about very major changes in the world history, starting from the world wars, which result in literal demise of the colonial power of Europe, and then how it really sets in a process which is one of the probably best experiments in regional integration, the European Union, and then the power play of the different international forces and the forces within, which result in the collapse of a wonderful country called Yugoslavia. Then you see from a very close quarters how, for example, the power center in the Western Hemisphere shifts from Europe to the United States. And then also, for example, how the Eastern Bloc, which was basically run on communist system, how they initially performed, and then both the systems, in fact, surprisingly, both the West and the East, they reach a point of what is called diminishing returns, where, in fact, the West uh, tries to reform itself, try to adjust to the changes more successfully than the East. Uh, when it comes to the communist world, China, in fact, decides that they would have a mixed system where the economy will be an open system, whereas the politics will remain the old closed system. And the Soviet Union literally collapsed. Now, you see, these changes then in the so-called, I would say, third world or the developing countries, run by the G77 platform and the non-aligned platform, they started making choices in that balance, uh, where to go, how to look after their interests. Many succeed, others don't succeed. We have the example of so-called Asian tigers. They do very well in that process. I would say India does very well in that process. We come a long way from our immediate post-independence, I would say a miserable situation, to a situation to become a global player, in fact. Global players in many ways. I think today, if you look at the global situation, which after the collapse of uh, the Cold War, I would say the former Soviet Union, more or less de facto became a unipolar world, uh, which was led by the United States. And the other two, for example, the other side of the story, the Soviet Union, which got reduced to the Russian Federation. Now, Russians remain a very strong security entity, but becomes very weak economic entity. On the other hand, the Chinese, in fact, become a very strong economic entity, but remain a very closed political system. Now, when it comes to our security, they do a good job, but still they are not really comparable to the top. So the Americans are trying to protect their control over the Western system. The Russians are trying to use their security power to fix their economy. And the Chinese are trying to use their economy to acquire the security status. And they are still kind of very reluctant to touch the political system, which has brought them where they are. Now, we have reached a stage where, to some extent, the US is also feeling a situation of diminishing returns in terms of what they have done in the Western alliance. They were the force behind globalization. They rather facilitated creation of a wonderful rule-based global economic system, which benefited literally everyone.
I'm in the global. I'm in the global webinar.
Some, I think there is some interference. If the mics could be switched off. In fact, when I was working, kind of representing India in UNIDO, the Director General would say, all the boats rise with high tide. So this was something like that in the post-war period. It provided a degree of stability where we did not have catastrophic disturbances. It was by and large stable world order in the absence of major wars. And everybody got a chance to work through that time and develop. So all the boats, smaller or bigger, all rose, but some took greater advantage than the others. And what is happening now, for example, the Americans took advantage of the so-called competitive advantage of manufacturing, producing in other lands. They did it in.
I'm in a global webinar. Call up to 1 hour or so.
They did it in Latin America. Then they did it in China to a great extent. Now, when you take certain manufacturing or economic activity to other lands for reasons of the competitive advantage, obviously, the the manufacturing base in the US and to some extent even in Western Europe went down. And suddenly people started saying, we have exported jobs. And this happened later in the services also. As a result, they are now reacting to, I would say they are now blaming their success and are trying to rectify their success story, where they say no more. We will bring jobs back to US. We'll bring manufacturing back to US. We will bring our industry back to US. I personally feel, I think this is more to do with the temporary phenomena of political situation, right? Because there is a constituency which is fairly substantial constituency, which feels aggrieved by the consequences of the liberal system which the Americans led post-war. Americans, in fact, took tremendous advantage of that open order. If you look at their GDP, really it multiplied over time. They literally control the world trading system through the dollar mechanism. They control the other economic institutions which were created under the Bretton Woods system. Now, they should have no reason to complain. They should have simply no reason to complain because they were not post-collapse of the Soviet Union. They had no challenges. Now, if you want to sit on the top of the pyramid, it brings a responsibility because unless you keep the underlying tiers of the pyramid stable, you cannot sit on the top because the top will collapse. Now, to some extent, that is what's happening. They are trying to cut the branch on which they are sitting. My own feeling is that I think they want some correction, but they do not want to cut the branch, nor they want to undermine the base of the pyramid on top of which they are sitting. Now, on the other hand, for example, now Chinese have come a long way, an economy close to 14 trillion, second largest. Now, what China experiment has done, they have not only grown economically, but they have done a fairly good job in terms of technology development. So it is not only an economic power, it's also a technology power. They have also used their economic power to strengthen their security operators. Today they are a huge force in terms of security. So they have a vision, for example, which was reflected in the Belt and Road Initiative, where they want to do what the Americans had done post-war. That take your financial muscle, your industrial muscle, your technology muscle to other countries and try to integrate them with your vision. Now, this is not a small power. It's a very major power, which now is asking this question that has the time come to carry on with the earlier business as usual under a unipolar, literally de facto a unipolar world. Now you see in the unipolarity, for example, why are people getting uncomfortable? Now look at the Russians, for example. Now the Russians feel very aggrieved about the extraterritoriality of the US law on sanctions. Now, what the Americans can do and nobody will question, when the Russians do, they will put sanctions on them, right? So they feel very aggrieved. They say, "Oh, how you can't do this?" And the same thing is Chinese. They feel that their autonomy in terms of strategic decisions is being curtailed because the world is governed by one unipolar entity. They want to challenge that and seek some degree of I would say sharing the space for decision making. Now look at the European Union, for example. Now, the European Union is also feeling a bit pressured by the US, because when it comes to NATO, for example, US is, sorry, you know, you're not paying sufficient contribution to this. You're not spending so much on your defense preparedness. And so much so that, in fact, I should not name, but the president went to the extent of saying Europe is as bad as China, but the only thing is it's smaller than China. Then in coming to Brexit, for example, we know that, US in a way promoted that sentiment which led to Brexit. As a result, the Europeans, and if we have some other session on this, I will explain how, for example, the Europeans felt aggrieved when they were dealing with the Yugoslavian crisis. Now, the Yugoslav crisis, which was handed over to the European Union for solving, but then pulling the rug from behind, ensured that the EU failed in delivering a solution to the Yugoslav crisis. Now, it delayed, it kept them bogged down for many years into the Yugoslav crisis. And then, for example, it delayed the integrational process, for example, of the common currency. It delayed the integration process of, for example, the Schengen area and all that stuff. So today, now then countries like India, for example, India, Brazil, South Africa, Japan. Now, all these countries are feeling that they have come of age, and today they can play a more equal role in the global governance. And they feel that the global system is not fair, is not equitable. It is not giving them their rightful place on the decision-making table. So as a result, in fact, everybody is seeking a change. Those who are sitting on the top of the pyramid are seeking change for a different reason. And those who are sitting on the lower levels of the pyramid are seeking change for a different reason. But the fact is that everybody is seeking a change, because we have reached levels, or we have reached stages where the existing systems are not able to fully respond to the genuine needs of the stakeholders. Therefore, while I disagree with the media, I would say, noises and overload, where they are predicting doom and gloom that everything is going to collapse, the liberal order is going to collapse, the international trading systems are going to collapse, the multilateralism is going to collapse. It's not true. Because nobody is seeking the collapse of the order, but everybody is seeking reforms to the order. So I think when you are in a comfortable situation, you become so complacent that you refuse, or you're not able to do what is called a gradual reform to the system. Because everything is hunky-dory, economies are growing, people are becoming more prosperous, there is no major crisis other than small, tiny pieces here and there by non-state actors. So you are not challenged. And since you are not challenged, you refuse to do what is called gradual reforms to the structure. So some, for example, if we go back to the pyramid, some stones were coming out, but nobody thought they should fix it, because the pyramid was too big and it was still able to sustain people sitting on the top. So they would not bother for that. And the lower levels were not strong enough to take all the stones out so that the top collapses. So we were in a situation where everybody was uncomfortable, but nobody was taking the bold decision of reforming the system. Right? Now, there are several factors which have come together. COVID, which really hit the world in an unprecedented manner and also exposed it exposed the structural weaknesses of those who thought they didn't have structural weaknesses. Can you imagine? The most powerful country suffers the most without a solution. And then the most powerful or technologically advanced, continent, West Europe, they suffer and are not able to provide immediate or quick solutions. Who succeeds? Relatively small, new entities on the global space. Who comes out successful? South Koreans, a relatively small power. Who comes out? Taiwanese. Who comes out successful? The Japanese. So, now it exposed the strength of the system, which they thought they had. B, it weakened them a bit relative to those countries which dealt with this better. China thought, probably in my view, I may be entirely wrong. China thought if there was a time to challenge the system, it was now. This is a time for them to test whether they can challenge the system beyond a threshold or not. I remember when I was in Yugoslavia, when NATO in fact challenged the former Soviet Union in Yugoslavia, just to test how much of a pressure they can take. Because in case, for example, they would retaliate in a massive way, they knew that it's a disaster, you should not do it. So they were gradually testing the patience and the tolerance of the Eastern Bloc, how close to their doors they will be able to accept the NATO operations. Now, similarly, China now is pushing the envelope, as we call it. China is testing the tolerance of the global order. How far will they accept it? Because they want to now tell to the world that we have arrived and we must have our own space of influence, and we would not accept too much of a veto by other powers on what we do. Right? Now, I think it could be a bluff which could be called by time. It could succeed. Who knows? So, there are those, because the current situation is so unpredictable. It is very difficult to come to a black and white kind of a prediction. What are we doing? Where we are going, right? But I think China is trying to raise their bets and see whether really time has come for them to crack the current situation and establish their position in that order, where they would say, sorry, I am equal, and we will take that decision accordingly. There are many things which will determine this. For example, one is how quickly and how soon we are able to control the pandemic. If the pandemic, for example, I was reading a report that the Russians are registering their first vaccine today, in fact, or tomorrow, right? On 12th. Are we on 12th? So, in case there are many other vaccines which are almost at the verge of being brought to the public. Now, in case we get an effective vaccine, say by the end of this year or early next year, which enables the world powers to somehow return to the normal activity, I think the response will be different. But in case it drags on without an effective solution, the response will be different. What happens in the US elections in November, who wins, depending upon that, the result would be different. What happens to the RCEP, because they're supposed to sign it in November, December this year, if it is signed, the result will be different. If the members wriggle out and are not able to do it, the result would be different. Now we are talking about, for example, many other formations like Quad and like Indo-Pacific and all that stuff. If these if these structures, if these formations further stabilize, the result will be different. But if they do not, if they remain only on paper and remain symbolic, the result will be different. What happens at our border with China, depending upon the result of that consequence, the result would be different. I think today, in fact, the factors are so diffused, it would not be wise for anyone to really list out what kind of world we are looking at post-COVID. But there are certain more fundamental questions on which you can be a bit more certain. And what are those factors which are more certain? One is that the multilateral system shall undergo reforms. You like it or not? There will be more meaningful reforms to the multilateral system. Now, when it comes to say, what is the top of the multilateral system? Say the Security Council. Do you assume that suddenly people will be willing to do Security Council reforms? My answer is no. Because while people will want to do reforms, they would not want to give up their power. Right? So they would not dilute their power while doing reforms. So the reforms will be more operational reforms. Right? Not very profound. Now, would there be, for example, changes in West Europe? Definitely there will be changes because it depends on Brexit. Now, when Brexit happened, I remember almost over 2 years ago, I gave a lecture. I said, this is not going to be a very easy path. Right? At that time, of course, I could not predict COVID, but based on the fundamentals of economics, I predicted that it is going to be an uphill task. It will not be a rosy outcome as is being predicted. Now, we all know that is coming true for many reasons, including COVID. A lot of that will depend on, for example, do the Brits come out winners of the game, triumphant post-Brexit? It will make a difference. But if they suffer and are not able to come out of those crises, the result will be very different, right? Because on that will depend the future of the European Union itself. Whether European Union will come out stronger or weaker, or the Union will be further challenged, will depend on the success or failure of Brexit. Now, if they succeed, many others will be incentivized to challenge the Union, right? They would not want to go by the discipline of Brussels, in fact. Coming to China, as I said, my own guess is China is testing the waters, but China is not interested in a conflict, right? Unless a conflict is forced on them, they would not on their own go for a conflict. A large conflict is not in their interest because while they have done very well economically, but in my view, they still have not arrived for challenging the world order through a violent challenge. They cannot do it, right? While, for example, economically, the world is semi-multipolar, where you have the United States, European Union, China, Japan, and all that stuff. But when it comes to the military power, world is still unipolar. It is not multipolar. So where are we going? As I said, the Americans would love to have unipolar world headed by them, but it will become more and more difficult because that will require hell of a lot of investment by them in the world order, and they right now seem to be reluctant to invest that kind of resources for leading the world order. Chinese would also love a unipolar world if they could lead it. But in case that is impractical, we all know that there will be no a unipolar world very soon, which will be led by China. But failing that, they would want a bipolar world, where they would try to settle with the US and say, all right, sir, you have your influence, I have my influence. You had the Monroe Doctrine for you, and I have my own doctrine. So let's come to a compromise. I respect your doctrine, you respect my doctrine, and let's live in peace, right? But the others would not want this. They would hate it. The Russians would hate it. The Europeans will hate it. The IPSA would hate it, right? They would not want this arrangement because then you lose your autonomy, right? Now, I come back to India and try to see, for example, what impact it can have on us, right? Because we have been demanding reforms to the multilateral system for a very long time. We have been demanding it to the United Nations. We have been demanding it within the WTO. We have been demanding it even regionally, in fact, reforms, right? So we want reforms because we know the status quo as it is not in our interest. So we also want reforms to the system. But what is that we want? Obviously, we want a multipolar world where more people, including us, have a place on the table for taking decisions. And we are not really run over by any power, unipolar or bipolar. Right? So that is our interest. Now, what kind of openings? For example, now economy is in debt. The IMF says the world economy is going to go down by over 5%. Our own economy is predicted to be down by 5%. Now, if economic order or economic arrangement changes post-COVID, what are we looking at? Looking at the trends today. They may not sustain because nobody can say that the talks we are doing today will sustain post-COVID. They may not sustain at all. But in case that talk and direction sustains, where are we heading? In fact, COVID, one thing which COVID has really brought to the fore is the weakness or failure of the economic globalization based entirely on the efficiency of production and supply chains. That is where, in fact, and also employment generation. So these are crucial factors on which, in fact, the so-called rich world is very, very upset that they can continue production in China, very efficient supply chains. But in case of crisis, they will hold you by your neck. Production, effective supply chains.
Hi, sir. So, okay, so we have another speaker. Anup sir, if you can kindly conclude.
Give me 2 minutes. I will conclude it. Hello?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So, there will be, in fact, what is called onshoring of manufacturing and supply chains. Now, in that onshoring, we can definitely take advantage of readjustment of the supply chains. We can take advantage. Technology will become a major, the so-called Industry 4 technologies will lead post-COVID economy. And India, with its strength in the ITS, can take advantage of that. Health services, India can take advantage of that. So there are certain areas where India has a natural advantage in post-COVID rearrangement. But what do we need for that? We can seek investments into India. Manufacturing. Just last 1 minute. What is that we need? What we need is that we need because to be loved by others, you must have certain qualities. And what are those qualities? That people love you or they come to you and sit with you. You have to be a cohesive, peaceful, predictable power. There has to be a predictability. And that predictability must lead to what is called ease of doing business. Number one. Number two, you must have sufficient strength for providing safety and security to yourself. you preferably should become a net security provider in the region. Then we must really work very, very proactively in developing our linkages with the region. Because unless we put the region at peace, we would not be an attractive partner for anyone for a long-term association. People will come and go. They will invest in our stocks and run away. But long-term investment will not come unless you are at peace with yourself and the region you are in. So I think I will stop here. I hope I was able to draw a picture of what could come. But I will caution people not to be driven by what is being written in the media today. Please keep your minds open. The game is still open. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, since multilateralism means we have to address 206 countries plus more, obviously there are a lot of things. Now we'll come deep inward. Here is Professor Gopal, a very eminent, of course, he's also a global person. He has been in various countries. He is an invited person with so many awards, so many rewards, so much of research. I would request him also to initial 2 minutes talk about his personal growth plan, and then what is it that is going to be waiting for us as an economist, as an educationist, and he is representing almost 40% of the population in terms of the youngsters who are all students. So I would request Gopal to start his. That's Mike. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Shekhar and Dr. Anup. It was very nice to listen to your talk on multilateralism and all that. And a lot of things I learned today from what you just now said. I would be generally talking on the economy and a little bit on the technology and the way forward for that. Now, basically, if you look at me, I'm an engineer from IIT Kharagpur. I did my BTech honors in mechanical engineering from IIT Kharagpur in 1976. I did my MBA, cost accountancy, my PhD, and my postdoctoral research. And I worked for about 35 years in various industries like L&T, Siemens, Tata Consultancies, etc. And about almost 30 years of teaching experience as a part-time. And since 2004, I've been working as a full-time academician, being the director of the D.Y. Patil University School of Management. And I'm also the member of the Board of Management for Ajinkya D.Y. Patil University at Pune. I've written several research books and published more than 100 research papers. And I've been awarded the best research paper at the International Marketing Conference in Malaysia. I've guided almost about 50 PhD students and about 44 MPhil students in the last so many years. My whole motto has been that every student of mine shall be a success student, and these students shall make a success story in this world. The topic on which we are going to talk today is basically on strategic way forward after the COVID impact on Indian economy as well as on technology. And for this now, I would like to share my screen. Yeah, just give me a minute, please. Can you see my screen?
No, you have to share it.
Yeah, is the screen visible now?
We can see.
Yeah. The roadmap which I'm going to talk is basically on the global environment, Indian environment. I'm going to talk a little bit on the impact of COVID on the various sectors, including education and on the employment. And for India to become one of the big successes in the world, as Anup was saying, I think the concept of Atmanirbhar is very important. And India comprises of a large number of MSMEs. So we need to talk about it. And to add a little bit to what Anup was saying about the Chinese behaving in a big manner and trying to show themselves. So I would like to talk about the investments made by some Chinese companies in India, the exports of China, and what strategies are we using to counteract all of them. And at the firm level, because if India is really to become big and flex its message, its muscles, then we must also be able to have strategies which will really make us grow forward. In a nutshell, there is heavy recession, likely to continue till 2021 and maybe a little bit more into 22. There are huge amount of disruptions in marketing and service. Swapping of currencies between two countries is likely to take place. And I personally feel the dollar will no longer be the only trading currency in the world. China will push its products in the world market. There will be huge amount of resistance. And the mood in several countries is to shift the investments from China to areas outside China, including India. The GDP is likely to drop to near zero level. And I'm seeing a V type of curve whereby it will drop to zero and then will start rising drastically. And the major issues facing Indian economy are supply chain, infrastructure is bad, consumer goods are not picking up, and there's a huge amount of credit squeeze to the MSME. The government is pushing the RBI as well as the banks to lend, but that's not happening because the banks are scared of NPAs. And this is going to affect manufacturing in the short run. The banks are scared that their loans might become NPAs. And one of the bigger challenges is when you look at the MSME, they account for almost 38% of the entire labor force. And bulk of this labor force have gone back to the villages. And when I talk to the migrant laborers, they told me, Saab, December ke pehle hum nahi aayenge. That means they will not come before December, maybe after Diwali, which is in November. Exports are down. Maybe a gimmick by USA for the presidential elections. But this tightening of immigration rules is likely to continue in the long run. My own research told me very clearly, in the short run, and by short run I'm talking of May 2021, 9 sectors are expected to show a promising growth. Not very big, but about 3, 4, 5%. And what are they? The food and beverages, health and pharmaceuticals, biotechnology, infrastructure, especially the government spending, consumer goods, banking and finance, insurance, supply chain and logistics, apparel and power sector. And if you look at the CMI data which is there available, it says that these are the sectors where employment is slowly showing an increase. Going forward, the next 9 sectors are going to show you a moderate growth, and by moderate I mean 1, 2, max 3% till May 2021, and that is consumer durables, gems and jewelry, primarily because the gems and jewelry market is dominated by the migrant labor, retail trade, aviation. The IT sector will also show a very moderate growth, contrary to a lot of expectations. Chemicals, metals and mining, telecom, and agriculture. Tourism, hospitality, automobile, MSME, building, and core manufacturing will show a zero or even negative growth. And I must tell you, in the case of building and construction, this negative growth is likely to continue till 2022. It is not going to ease so easily. Going forward, the education sector is going to show a massive change. There is going to be a tremendous growth in skill-based technology. Online education is going to grow very, very rapidly. In fact, up to December 20 and maybe in January 21, February 21, face-to-face teaching will shift to online, and the consequence will be tremendous growth in the fly-by-night operators. Educational institutions will have to invest heavily into infrastructure to meet the digital online requirements. Online examinations will be demanded, and a large number of industry-based personnel, because they would have lost their jobs. And currently we see many of the middle-level people are losing their jobs or having job cuts. Life sciences, like biotech, pharma, will show a tremendous amount of growth, and the placements will be extremely difficult till May 2021. But after 2021, the placements will increase tremendously. Faculties are also required to keep abreast of the new digital technology that is required. In terms of unemployment, the index is likely to increase tremendously. Rural India will show a big rise, which is already seen. I mean, the current data of CMI also shows a tremendous growth in rural India, which only validates what I've been saying, that Mandrega and such things are giving a big boost to the employment. Work from home will increase, and after 2021, August, September, the GDP will increase by 5 to 6%. Moving forward, how do we come out of this, and what is the strategic tool that we have? And here I personally feel that the government of India has to play a very major role. And therefore came the concept of Atmanirbhar, which means self-development. And it is based upon 5 basic principles: economy, infrastructure, system. The demography of this country plays a very, very important role, and the demand creation. The government of India has given $266 billion, which is 10% of the GDP, for the revival of the Indian economy, which is quite a big sum. And this package comprises of direct transfer of money, granting credit to MSMEs, small businesses, roadside vendors, a loan of 10,000 rupees with corporate guarantee or sovereign guarantee is given to the roadside vendors, and 50,000 crore package to rural development. And the bulk of this money is going to the MSMEs, which have been redefined by the government of India. And if you look at it, as on 2017, there were a total of 633 lakh MSMEs employing about almost 1,200 lakhs. That means the bulk of the MSMEs are operating at the lower end, employing two, three people. And therefore, I said they constitute a major chunk of the employment, almost 38 to 40%. In line with what Anup has been saying, China has been trying to put up its show, and therefore they are trying to get into all sorts of areas just to make their presence felt. And in India itself, Alibaba, Tencent, Xiaomi, and so many other countries, so many other companies are there. And if you look at the way they are practically entered into all sectors of the Indian economy. If you look at the top exports of China, it's electricals, machineries, toys, sports equipment, furniture, plastics, mineral oil, etc., etc. And they are being sent to top 9 countries, account for almost 60 to 70% of the Chinese exports. And India is one of them. India accounts for almost 70 billion US dollars, yeah, and it's ranked number 5 in the top Chinese exports. And what are they exporting, or what is India importing? Electrical, machinery, organic chemicals, basically pharma, plastics, iron and steel. And when you look at pharma, India imports almost 17,400 crores, which is roughly 2 billion worth of intermediary pharmaceutical products, or what is called as active pharmaceutical ingredients. And in the case of 68 APIs, we import almost 100% from China. And in relation with the Atmanirbhar program, many public sector units have started indigenization. And I think some of these will come up by 2022. For example, propeller shafts, for example, side covers, lamps, air ducts, sockets, etc. These are items which can very easily be manufactured in India. And by December 24, 25, 4 lakh contracts, 4 lakh rupees worth of contracts comprising of 101 defense units are going to be manufactured in India. And let me tell you only one thing, sir. All of you must remember, out of the 70 billion goods that we are importing, even if 10 to 15% goods we can start manufacturing in India, our GDP will shoot up to almost double digit. And this is possible by 2021 latter half. And that's why I said till May 2021, we could have serious problems. Our GDP will be slowing down. But after 2021, the GDP will shoot up because of all these Atmanirbhar projects, the defense project and the indigenization projects that are coming into place. But what are the changes that are going to take place? The old normal will no longer exist. Indian companies will have to get used to the new normal. And what is that? Digitalization in the form of artificial intelligence, cloud computing, VR, AR handsets, 5G technology, IoT devices are going to increase tremendously. the market for cybersecurity, which is one of the key areas, that will increase tremendously. And blockchain technology will be used for tracking infectious diseases, crisis management, and supply chain. And here I can only tell you, Google has already started developing, using artificial intelligence and blockchain technology to measure diabetes by just observing the retina of the eye. These are some of the technological changes which are likely to come, and we need to be well prepared on this. By 2022, and in fact, even now, the government of India has already taken very, very strong steps. Cancellation of orders worth crores of rupees, which are given to China. Talegaon project worth 5,000 crore has been cancelled by the Maharashtra government. Because of Wuhan, purchase of arms have increased. 59 digital apps has been banned. Now, this is already giving the Chinese companies a sort of a little bit of a, scare. And this is forcing them, unlike what Anup says, they are not only testing the waters, they are also seeing how deep the waters is and what could be the reaction of the Indian government. And this has forced the Chinese to come to the table and start negotiating. At the micro level, that means at the firm level, if really we want to move forward, the Indian companies, MSMEs, be it the multinationals, they are not at all cost effective. And if they are not cost effective, they cannot be a global player. And therefore, in order to be a global player and start dominating the world, even to the extent of 20-30%, you need to have reduced your cost. You need to move to digitalization. You need to adopt technology. Economies of scale will be very important. Innovations will become a critical tool. And more important, very, very important, is documentation. And we Indians have got this habit of saying, chalta hai, forget it. Kya hoga, kuch nahi hoga. And whereas the European and the Americans are extremely keen on documentation. Give you a very classic example. I went to the US. I booked my ticket from Make My Trip. And, we South Indians, our first name, middle name, last name, it's all mixed up. So the guy told me, sir, the passport says Ramamirtham Gopal. And I said, okay, write it as Ramamirtham Gopal. And the ticketing did not take it into account because the last name was missing. And what did this Make My Trip guy do? He wrote Mr. as the first name. Went from here to India, went from here to US, no problems. But when I came back at the ticketing counter in New Jersey, they did not allow me to fly back. They said, sir, your passport says Ramamirtham Gopal, whereas your first name on the ticket is Mr. I said, ma'am, there is a mistake. It cannot happen. Mr. cannot be the first name. It's a title. She said, sorry, I cannot do. And I called Brahma, I called Vishnu, I called Shiva, I called Allah, I called Guru Gobind Singh, and name, I called everybody. And finally, I don't know who answered my call, but just 30 minutes before the flight could depart, there was a change in the ticketing counter, the lady in the ticketing counter. And I went back to her and made a very sad face. And she looked at me, she looked at my passport, and she just stamped it and said, go. And I literally ran, my dear friends. And this is what I meant by saying documentation. The documentation is not there. We are losing out. Our manufacturing process is good, but the US always troubles the pharma companies, saying that your GMP is bad and your documentation is bad. And if you do not have good documentation, I think we will lose out. Therefore, agility, speed, transparency will be the new mantra to succeed. And these are some of the steps which are required to be taken. And with this, I come to the end of my presentation. And thank you for patient listening. Thank you, Shekhar, and thank you, Anil. Thank you, everybody, and God bless all of you.
Thank you, Gopal. It was a real good scholarly presentation. I know how lucky students will be, and to have in-depth knowledge, whether it is India, whether it is abroad, whether it is the Chinese problem. One thing common in both the presentation. Of course, I want both of you to talk once more. It is not ending now, but it will be the end of the concluding talk. So, one thing which all of us are saying is that yes, things are going to be good, and that is a future tense. And also, we are creating a roadmap. We are also not saying because that is very sweet to hear. So we say things will be good. Sada Sukhi Bhava. So for the Sada Sukhi Bhava to happen, we need to take some steps. One thing we are all saying government. Now, government says, I didn't do it. It is something else. It is a war. It is a war with an invisible force. It is a war with something which we do not know. It is a war in which the enemy is attacking you from all sides, or we believe they are attacking us from all sides, and we ourselves do not know who is the enemy, what is the enemy. But it has successfully brought down the economy. It has brought us to the knees, and now also we are all sitting at our own home and then talking all philosophy. But our mindset says that we are going to grow. For such a thing to happen, what would be the thing which all of us can do from a multilateral point of view with respect to Anup, and from the Indian point of view, which we are doing and we will have to do from Gopal? Can we conclude with two sentences from each, Anupji and Gopalji? Anupji?
See, Shekhar, when it comes to what we should be doing, I think that mantra literally has not changed. Our strengths have not changed. They are there. They are the same strengths which we always had. I think we need to keep working on those strengths. Make sure that nobody is able to chip away those strengths. Further build on those strengths, as I mentioned. You see, to be taken as a partner by anybody. For example, why should you be my friend? You will ask for certain qualities. Develop those qualities so that people are able to consider you as a good partner. Stability, predictability, rule of law, security, qualifications, skills, all those things have to be there. When we say ease of doing business, it's only a one word, but it's this one word underneath has so many factors. Only then you create ease of doing business, right? This is one thing which will have to be then carried to the world in an honest way. When it comes to multilateralism or bilateralism, I think we have to stick to the principles, because the transactions change, but the principles do not change. So we should stick to the principle of rule-based governance. Rule-based governance, which is fair, which is equitable. We have to keep working on that mantra. And when it comes to us, to make us more effective, as I said, we need to work on those parameters. Thank you.
Okay. Now, Gopal, along with this, I have one more small comment I need from you. That today we all know that we are very proud to see that most of the Indians are heading some of the topmost enterprises in USA and many other countries. Now, with this COVID and other thing coming, will the trend continue? Or will we see one more of your students sitting in Bombay being a CEO of another multinational in USA and controlling whatever we call? And when would this be spread to, when we can say even a Chinese company seeing an Indian because of the enterprise to head? Just another 2 minutes. Can you just...
Let me tell you, wow, it's very simple. By and large, If you look at it, there are only two countries in the world who have mental powers which is far, far superior to everybody. And one is the Israelis, the other is the Indians. Now, what is pulling the Indian down is our own culture. And we do not believe in live and let live. And this is forcing all Indians who are good, strong, who are mentally sharp to move out, to go to the US, UK, and such countries. And once we go there, we work very hard. While in India, while we tend to work hard, there are too many forces which are trying to pull you down. The biggest force, as Anup also says, is the taxation, is the employee, the other employees out there. You know, the poor infrastructure that we have, and so many other factors, the cultural base that we have. And look at it from a different angle altogether. We have a central government which is different. We have a state government which is different. And even in the area of progress of the country, they two don't match. They don't agree. Right? The Chinese war, the attacking of the COVID, some of the state governments are at complete loggerheads. Now in this, who suffers? It's you and I who suffers. And therefore what happens? All the good people who are there, several of my students have today moved out. They are in Dubai, they are in US, they are in China, they are in South Africa, and they are all heading. And I think this trend will continue unless and until we change our attitudes, we change our behavioral patterns, and this has to be aided not only by our own self, by the government also. And one biggest attitude that we have is the Chalta Hai attitude, which we need to change. If we can change the Chalta Hai attitude, I think 75% of our problems will be solved. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. So just to conclude, yes, we are in a bad situation, and we would definitely have good by two experts, and we all know about it. And in this multilateralism, with almost 25 million of Indians in various countries, and more going, as per Gopal, many of the students are abroad. And I also believe that we should welcome them to go. I don't think, India is anyway producing so many people. And why I'm saying, not because we want it, our children going abroad or our student going abroad is just like our daughter getting married to somebody and going there. Because we are not one of those who are having any dominating power. We are welcome people throughout the world. And the most important than any of this thing is today, this 25 million Indians abroad also control $1 trillion, almost 50% of India's economy. And if that increases, Indians always come back to India. Even if the third generation, which has not really stepped into India, has got a feeling for India. So with that particular aspect coming into this multilateralism, we should encourage our people to go abroad. We should welcome others also to come here. And we should see to it that this economy, technology, multilateralism is something, a thing which will really take us to the next dimension. With that, thank both of you, and thanks to the listeners. And I close this particular session. Akram.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. It is really wonderful to have you all. Viewers, if you like our discussion, do subscribe and follow us in Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, as well as in YouTube. We will be back with similar experts on different topics to connect with you and to discuss with you. Thank you. Keep watching the Policy Times.
Bye. Thanks, Akram.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Recording is gone.